Hello, can you hear me? First of all, may I start with apologizing to you all for the late start of this program. We programmed it to start at 6:30 this evening, but unfortunately we are 30 minutes delayed. So please accept our apologies on behalf of myself and my group.
Tradition of late start is still on.
We do hope to maintain and continue with that.
Good. Good to know. We have not changed culture.
Shut up and let people talk.
This is one of the main purposes of this meeting, is to invite you to this special event that is conceived by the activists of the community, some of us who have been engaged in the struggle of the Bangladeshis in the East End. Although we have taken this initiative in support from East End Connect, an organization who sponsors this project, and we are volunteering to support the cause to further the aims and objectives. Although this idea had been in the community floating for a long time, but for a number of reasons, and very good reasons, maybe we are not able to take this task and work on it to deliver the objectives for our future generations. The purpose of this project, you will see from the banner, stories, struggles and stride of the community. The first was the stories is the primary objective of this project, is to capture directly from those who have been involved and experienced the struggles in their lives living in East End of London. We both Bangladeshis and British Bangladeshis community, we lived for a long time in this area. Primarily, you can go back to the middle of the 18th century to today, and it's continued to grow. But we felt it is very important for us to capture our history, our experiences, our struggles, and our achievements. And we hope through this project we will be able to present a document that from within participation of the people who are going to speak for themselves. It is not going to be an editorial academic work, it is going to be a direct speech of people who participate in this program. And our aim is also to engage directly with those who are still alive and those who we have lost through our journey. It is very difficult for me to utter another word when we remember those we have lost from the community, from among ourselves. I'm not going to make a lecture because we have speakers who are going to speak about this project and the journey and how every single one of us who are present in this room and those who are not here with us in this event can make a contribution, and how we're going to be able to approach them and how they can contribute. These processes will be discussed by the program presentable tonight. May I first of all welcome you all for making time to come to this event. This is the launch of a program that we all hope will bring our communities' stories, histories together and bind us again to the experiences that we have in the past and experiencing today, and we also can reasonably anticipate through the political discourse that is taking place today that experiences to come as the challenges for us in the future. May I first of all welcome Mr. Rajanuddin Jalal to come to the rostrum to sit next to me. He is our first speaker on this program today. May I now invite Sanjida Alam, the Engagement Learning Officer from Tower Hamlets Local History Library and Archives. May I now call Farida Mumtaz, writer, poet, and training facilitator. This program is divided into 3 separate segments. The first, that our speaker will speak on a given subject, and hopefully they will have their presentation if they have, and Dalal has his presentation. And then we will have an interactive session that those of you who are here, we will try our best to allow you to speak for a short time, or you can ask questions or inquiries about the project. One of the things that we are aiming to have from this project is have your involvement and involvement of those who are outside this room and not in present with us. I will now also invite the project coordinator, Dr. Ahmedullah, to just come for a moment and then you can go to your desk. I do want to make this very frank and clear that there is no division between everyone in this room. There is no division between those who are sitting in the auditorium and those who are sitting behind the rostrum here. We are all members of the community, and we are all equal, and we have all have a story to tell. And it's important that in how we personally choose to tell that story and to be part of this project. With that in mind, I will like to invite Badrul Alam to come to the rostrum, please, to present the project information. Badrul Alam.
Good evening and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I begin with offering you an Arabic greeting which means peace be upon you. I'm not sure if you are all in peace or not, but I'm not. The reason is that I will not be in peace until I hear to see the end of suffering and killings of innocent Palestinian people by Israelis in Gaza. The bloody war is costing thousands of lives, displays millions of innocent Palestinians, but the war itself has been fueled and supported by our government in the UK, the West meaning the Europe, and the Biden government in the US, all of which are absolutely unacceptable. And as I said, I don't know when I can be in peace seeing what's happening in this world. At the same time, also I would like to say that it's absolutely unacceptable at the moment seeing and witnessing 2 wars. One is between Israel and Palestine, and the other one is between Russia and Ukraine. World leaders have aligned in 2 complete contrasts, selectively condemning one, which is to do with Russia and Ukraine, offering unconditional refugees and shelters to the victims of Ukraine. However, the very same people are condoning the ugly war between Israel and Palestine, directly supporting and supplying and arming Israel to do more what they are already doing. In other words, allowing more genocidal actions on the land of Palestine. Not only the war is unholy, immoral, and inhuman things to do, but unacceptable on the face of basic humanity. I'm not sure how many of you saw the Sun election showdown last Sunday. I was personally appalled and disgusted to hear Sakya Starmer's comment on immigration and Bangladeshis, directly attacking Bangladeshis by name, which is nothing other than political gain. He has forgotten that Bangladeshis have always been a loyal supporter of the Labour Party in the UK. When it comes to power, people often forget to disregard their past and focus on what would get them more votes and support from the racists and unsympathizers. The treatment of minority communities are not new on the land of the UK. We have seen that in the past, especially growing up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s and onward, how unholy, how unequal, and poverty we all had to go through. Having said that, I remember when I was young and growing up in the 70s and 80s, that those campaigns, we are here to stay and we are here to fight for our right. The reason we had taken this initiative is to record some of the struggles, stories, and strides of Bangladeshis living in the East End of London. As we all know, East End has always been a place of constant arrival and departure, but in our case, we have arrived and continue to live in East End, especially in Tower Hamlets. Again, there has been so many political changes, so many stories being written, produced, and recorded, some of which are academic, some of which are community, but I feel a true recording is very much needed in order to leave a legacy or record for the next generation. Unless we are in a position to do that, the story, the struggles, and I would say achievements of Bangladeshis will not be truly recorded. And again, purpose of this project, struggles and strides of Bangladeshis, we just wanted to make a beginning of true recording of community struggles and achievements. With that in mind, we kind of formed this charity, and we have attracted funding from National Lottery Heritage Fund to do a historical project. And again, as I said, this is not new in our case. We have been doing similar work from Stepney Community Trust. Some of you would recall it was formerly known as St. Mary's Center. So again, we would continue to do what we have been doing, but our approach to this is to record true stories of Bangladesh's struggles and strife. Again, we would welcome any support, suggestion, and contribution you would like to make following the launch. Again, as I said, that's the beginning, and I hope we will continue to have your support and cooperation in terms of recording and pursuing this important project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Badru. Although the purpose of this meeting is not to comment on political issues, but this is naturally unavoidable. Our stories, our struggles, and our strides are political, and we need to recognize that. And the aim of this project is to build a platform where all of us can share our experiences, and from that experiences, those of us are engaged either in the media or in the academia or in the public service, wherever we may be. We can build on those as an argument against those who seek to exploit us. And that exploitation was clearly shown on national television by a leader of a so-called political party. That is reminiscent the statement of Enoch Powell a very long time ago. And I made that analogy with clear understanding of the issue, that it is nothing but a ethnic political exchange. I now like to welcome Rajanuddin Jalal to present his talk. And I hope we all know that when Jalal talks, it's very important. We listen to him very carefully. Thank you, Jalal.
Those were in the olden days. Sorry. Please bear with me because I'm recovering from a virus of some kind. I don't know what happened. It's been with me for a while. So, good evening, assalamu alaikum, and greetings to you all. First of all, I have to make an announcement. Otherwise, I'll not be forgiven. Our good friend Rafiqullah told me that I should make this announcement at the beginning. So, this coming Sunday, on the 30th of June, there will be a tribute gathering in memory of our old friend and comrade, late Abdul Noor, who was an activist in the anti-racist movement and the Battle of Brick Lane in 1978. So it's going to be at 6 p.m. Sunday evening at the Business Center in Great Oak Street, and you are all invited to attend. First of all, congratulations to the Eastern Connect organization for being able to attract funding for this important history, heritage, and culture project. Those of you who are involved with the world of funding would know that it's very difficult to get heritage lottery funding. You need specialist skills to be able to convince them that your project is worthy of consideration. So thank you very much. Well done. This project is about our struggles and strides from 1950 to year 2000, a period of 50 years. This study cannot begin without considering the historical context of our community. Our history is linked to empire, exploitation, and migration. There used to be a community of a few dozen seafarers who came to settle in the east end of London, not far from here, in the Brick Lane and Settle Street areas, back in the 1950s. And now at the present time, we estimate that there are some 700,000 British Bengalis living in the UK. So that's a large community. People came from then Pakistan and later Bangladesh to settle in some of the most deprived areas in the UK. Places like Spitalfields, now known as Spitalfields and Bangla Town. That obviously created tension and pressures. The white working class people felt threatened, and of course, they often blamed us, the Bengalis, for their problems. Bangladeshi workers worked in factories, retail, catering, and other industries, and they did jobs that nobody else wanted to do, and that's the reality of them. The whole community was under siege. The white working class people found it easy to scapegoat Bengalis for their own ill fate, because they also happen to be some of the most deprived people in this country. but instead of fighting the establishment, they turned their attention on the Bengalis. So the river forming of blood from inner power legitimized racism in the mainstream. The existence of the National Front created momentum for Paki bashing. Maggie Thatcher's introduction of the concept of the swamping of Britain by people of other cultures gave platform in the mainstream politics to the racist elements within society. Racism was an everyday experience for Bengalis in the 1970s and 1980s. It was in the form of attacks on the streets, on your homes, businesses. School children came under attack, women. There were no-go areas for Bengalis in the East End of London. You did not venture out of your home because of the fear of being attacked and Paki bashing. The police historically refused to take action against the attackers and instead often criminalized Bengali youth. And you will find account of these kind of incidents in Dan Jones's Blood on the Street. The Battle of Brick Lane in 1978 was a turning point for our community. Our elders, the previous generations, always thought that they had come here to earn some money and then eventually return home. But after the racist murders, including that of Al-Tabali, and the national demonstration against racism and fascism, the young people had decided that enough was enough, and that we were going to fight back against racism. And of course, the East End of London and the UK was our home. This demonstration had shaken the political establishment, and this was the first time some 10,000 Bengalis, supported by anti-racist comrades, went on the march against racism. Our slogans were, here to stay, here to fight. What do we want? Justice, black and white, united fight, end police brutality now, self-defense is no offense. These slogans signified our stance in terms of our future in this country. It is the youth of our generation that decided there is no going back. We are going to fight back and seek our rightful entitlements and justice in this society. The local community was successful in coming together in defeating the GLC's proposed ghetto housing plan. The Tories were in power then at the GLC. The Hackney and Tower Hamlets Defence Committee for the first time was able to organize a day-long strike against racism and successfully shut down all the businesses in the East End of London. And that was another landmark achievement against racism. This was the summer of discontent. People spontaneously came out and took part in rallies, meetings, marches, demonstrations. Nobody had to organize them. People were doing it for their survival, their existence, and their rights and entitlements. The NF were eventually defeated by the local community, black and white people coming together, and they had to relocate their headquarters from Hoxton to Kent in Welling, and that was a huge defeat for them, and that brought to an end to their presence and the spreading of their racist hatred in places like Tower Hamlets and the rest of the East End of London. After the Battle of Brick Lane in 1978, the community earnestly began community empowerment projects. A large number of self-help community organizations were established. Many of the people who are involved with those organizations are present tonight. And That's a good sign because we are still able to come together against racism. The arrival of Ken Livingstone at the GLC was a great help. He provided leadership against racism. He supported community organizations with community resources. He supported policy changes for justice and equality. For example, the establishment of the Race and Housing Action Team and funding of projects like the Jagonari Women's Association, which is no longer there. It has been shut down eventually. LBTH, the Bara Council, also took on board the needs and aspirations of the Bengalis, partly because the leader of the council then, Paul Beasley, was a friend and was supportive of our community. Community arts, cultural and linguistics projects thrived during that period with some funding from the local authorities, but they have been in steady decline ever since. Religious and faith-based activities expanded. For example, a large number of mosques and madrasas were established, and they are still on the rise. The Home Affairs Select Committee report on Bangladeshis was a milestone document that provided us the impetus for fighting against institutionalized racism. That report made it possible for us to knock on the doors of the authorities and the establishment for our rights and entitlements. Then there are some pictures of community empowerment projects, self-help projects that have helped to build our community as it stands at the moment. Political participation and achievement was another issue that is important to us, and of course the research that will be undertaken by this project will have to consider that aspect too. Participation in mainstream politics was triggered after the Spitalfields by-election results in 1982, won by an independent Nurul Haq, late Nurul Haq, sponsored by the People's Alliance of East London. However, the Labour Party establishment had decided that Bengalis should be limited to councilorships only. The first Bengali PPC was nominated by Labour after their defeat to George Galloway of Respect, not before then. The battle continues for representation even today. Because a clique-based political system has halted Bengali political advancement in the east end of London. So why support the EEC initiative and this project? Every community's history, heritage, and are shaped by individual and collective shared experiences. We have not kept a good record of our social, political, and cultural history in the UK. In the past, some outsiders and professionals have written about our communities. The EEC initiative funded by the HLF is an important vehicle for engaging our younger and future generations to take an interest in our history, heritage, and cultural matters. We need facts, data, and information to be collected on a free, fair, and objective manner. And I stress this point. Our collected information and data should be subject to scrutiny and verifiable to represent the truth. There is often a prevailing tendency to rewrite history, and I know this is an unpleasant thing to say, but it has to be said. Therefore, information providers and collectors in the form of researchers, thesis writers, and interviewers must avoid this temptation. The EEC project initiative should be about collecting true, unbiased, and factual information and data for our future generations. I hope we can all help with this project. I'll be happy to answer any questions and welcome your comments too. Thank you.
Thank you, Jalal Bhai, for your wonderful presentation. Although you denied, but clear and eloquent as always. Thank you. Now I would like to invite Dr. Ahmedullah on the backdrop of what I would say is that introduction to the project, both by Bodrul Alam and Jalal Bhai. I would like to invite him to take us through the project methodology, which Jalal Bhai briefly touched at the very end of his presentation. Dr. Ahmedullah, would you please take us through the processes and mechanics of this proposed project? Thank you.
About 10 years ago, I started to read East India Company documents. You know, when the first East India Company ship went to Asia, every ship had to write journal accounts, latitude, longitude, position, landmarks, markets, what they bought, what they sold, how much, and so on. And they also wrote down accounts of people that they met in various places in Asia, Africa, Japan, and so on. And we read, and they kept records, you know, written 400 years ago. They're still there, you can read. And they're really fascinating. It really opens up a whole new world for you, you know, when you start reading about what happened 400 years ago. But the problem is, it's only one-sided story. The English, they were required to write, and they have good narratives for their purpose. They wrote about all cultures, wherever they went, in order to inform people back home and next generation how to go there, deal with in business. When we recently ran a project where we try to fictionalize history, engaging members of the community. We found it so difficult to understand the other side. The stories about India, Gujarat, stories about Sumatra, and so on. But if we want to write a fiction, unless we understand the other side, we don't understand the interactions. So there's been a big gap because our society, so far, for a long time, didn't focus on writing their own history from their own point of view. So there are not many records. I wrote a fiction about a early 1600 Bengal. But I didn't know the customs, what people wore, what people ate, how they spoke, what kind of names they gave their children. The only writing I found, a Portuguese monk traveling through Bengal. And again, if you read his stuff, you will know that there's a lot of fantasy, a lot of crazy things he wrote about the people. So, because we don't write down our own history, it creates so much disadvantage because we can be confused, we can be explained wrongly, and so on. 3 years ago, Rita will talk more about it, I just mentioned this, we ran a project on Bangladeshi women, who used to work as machinists from home. We interviewed about 20 women and men and so on. 4 people that we interviewed are already dead now, but we got their stories. And there's so many people that are dying, so it's really urgent that we get their stories recorded to understand and also for future generations. So those 4 people, we know their stories and they're so important. They give us so much insights into the world, their experience, what they did and so on. And unfortunately we lost them. But if we didn't write their account down, then we wouldn't have known about their experience. That's why it's so important to write down history. Just one other thing before I go through my slide quickly. Is I get a lot of emails from many young people. They're really hungry about history because they want to understand their identity, where they come from, their roots, and their situations. If you don't know history, you don't really understand, you don't learn lessons, you don't get insights about human nature, conflict, violence, and so on, and economic and other processes that brought us here. So that's why I've dedicated my life quite a bit now in trying to promote history, so that, and history is very powerful, so we want to promote in the learning so that we can equalize the powers of history. So everybody becomes empowered by learning history independently. I'm just going to quickly go through the project. I won't go through this because everybody will mention this. I'm just going to. Some of the details in there have already been mentioned in different ways and will be mentioned by others as well. See, this project it's not. It's a small project, yeah? So this project is not going to achieve everything that we might want to learn about and capture. And we see this as project as a window into a world that needs to be captured and interpreted and recorded in a much more comprehensive way. And we see this as like a catalyst. So there will be 50 oral history interviews, right? And they're division, 35 past activists from Bangladeshi background. I mean, this is in the list. We can do more, you know. We've got the resources. But this is how the project has been formulated for funding. 5 Bangladeshi residents, you know, who can just tell us about their experience. Some 5 non-Bangladeshi residents and 5 non-Bangladeshi activists. There will be research, you know, research carried out by people that we recruit from the community, because we will be recruiting about a dozen community participants, and they will be trained, they will be supported and mentored, and they're the ones who's going to do the work. Some will undertake oral history interviews, and some will undertake research, and some will deal with the data, you know, information to show us trends and how things have moved in terms of population, health, education, economics, and so on. In terms of research, we have divided into 5. So 5 individuals that we recruit, we'll allocate them, you know, each decade from 1950s to 2000. So they will focus on researching on the Bangladeshi Bengali experience in the East End, settling in and so on, and institutions and how they go health, education and so on. As I said, we recruit about a dozen, around 12 community participants. We will provide them with training and mentoring. I think I've already said this, yeah? So I won't go into this. Yes, in addition to the interviews and research, we will have 3 public meetings, you know, like this, in a group setting. We'll record, we'll have detailed conversation, and we have divided that into 3 groups, like business people, cultural advocate, performers, and educationists, right? We can do more as well, but these are the ones that are included, you know, in the application. And this will just enable, when you get a group, right, and have a discussion, and one will kind of bring a prompt in the memory, and a conversation will develop, so we'll get a deeper understanding of the situation. The outcomes, right, yeah? We'll have 50 oral history, we'll deposit at the Tower Hamlets archives, a dedicated website. We'll produce some immersive video experience, you know, 360-degree camera over there, and which will be available to the people later on. A short documentary, an exhibition, and we'll work on the stories that we generate with the theatre director to produce a drama based on what we discover. You know, we will work with the people in the education to develop an education pack for schools, and there will be a large printed book. And this one is about 400 pages, really. But this one might, in my view, it might go into several volumes. So it would be very thick. Right, the timetable. It's an 18 months project. It started in May this year. We'll finish October next year. We will be also publicizing and inviting people to join the project to actually do all the things. It's a voluntary thing, but there will be expenses. People will get training, and they will own the information that they generate. So we'll be inviting people to join. If people here want to join, from next week we'll have application on our website, and we'll also email people whose email list are in our list, the application and details how to apply and so on.
Thank you for taking us through the project detailed and the methodology that's going to be engaged in delivering the project objectives. It is very true, the previous speakers had said, any community is as strong as it knows its own history. I would now like to invite Farida Montaz, the writer, poet, and training facilitator, to present her talk today. Thank you, Farida.
Hello, assalamu alaikum. My name is Farida. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the project that I did with the Home Seamstress book that we printed. So here it is. We have very limited copies. It has run out, and we are trying to raise some money to print some more copies. So we created this book called I Sewed, and I Sewed, and it was about home seamstresses in the East End of London. So basically, the book is based on 13 participants' research and interviews, and it contains more than 20 stories of what it was like for home seamstresses as they worked in their environments and made their home in London. So we began it in 2019. However, we did face a bit of an obstacle. COVID came just as we started to get momentum into the project. And that made things very difficult, but we didn't give up. We wanted to carry on, and we wanted to make sure that these women had the voices that had for so long been hidden within our community. We completed the project in 2022, so you can see it took a lot longer than expected, but we did have the hiccup of COVID. And we've got interviews from seamstresses from different backgrounds. We interviewed their sons and daughters. We also interviewed non-Bangladeshi residents as well that were part of that time period. I interviewed rag traders and also did some oral history. I was one of the researchers, and I actually wrote a research article. So my article was looking at the Bangladeshi political participation. So it's one of the 6 articles that was there, and what we looked at was basically how political participation had changed from the development of Bangladesh to the migration into the UK. And actually it was really, really interesting because it gave us voice and a context, and I think somebody's mentioned before, I think it was you actually, like that, the young people, the generations now want to know, where we came from, because we don't know where we're going unless we know where we came from. Also, identity is so misconstrued now. We have 2 different identities that we're trying to bring together, the British and the Bangladeshi identity. So it's been really important to have those voices and understand some of the struggles of our ancestors. I did 3 interviews as well, actually, with people engaged in politics, and it varied. It varied from someone who was a councillor to a poet, a younger generation poet, and also an older generation woman. So we looked at all the different ways that people participated in political change in the East End of London. Okay, so why was it important and what outcomes did we get? I don't think I can do it full justice standing here, because actually what the project did is it didn't just demonstrate our history and document our history. It gave a voice to people that had been invisible in the past. So I think we know home seamstresses worked very hard right? And they were a very critical part of our history. But that story was not told. And when the project came to an end, actually, I mentored 3 home seamstresses, and they were able to sit on this stage and tell their story to a group just like this. And they had never had the chance to do that before. So actually it went beyond just producing a book, it actually gave a voice to the voiceless. So I believe that it can, these things can really, really make an impact. So, we now have a new project coming up, which is the Stories of Struggles and Strides, and it looks at half a century in London's East End. And again, this is such a crucial piece of work to understand our history, right? There's been a lot of talk about racism in the past and how things, the political activism and how that's changed. But racism isn't over. Discrimination isn't over, okay? It still exists, and it exists just in a different way. I mean, we had Paki bashing before. Now we have the subtle racism, which in a sense is even more difficult because you can't prove it. So we need to keep on fighting, we need to keep on telling our stories, and we need to keep using our voice so that we're heard beyond the East End and beyond London. Because I'll tell you something, when you step out of the big cities such as London, Manchester, Birmingham, racism is still very, very prevalent. Discrimination is still very prevalent. Our community is still not given the accolades that it should be given. So we need to, as a community, come together and make sure that our voices are heard, our struggles are spoken about, and actually, we are seen in the light we should be seen in. So my final slide is really about, why is it important? It's a crucial time, and this is what shaped the British Bangladeshi community of today. If some of the older generations hadn't gone through those struggles, the experience of my generation would have been very different. And actually, my generation will thank the older generations because of you guys. We experienced less racism and discrimination, and we've had opportunities which the generations before us didn't have. So we understand that, and we want to bring that to the forefront. But also, it's not over, because after us, there will still be racism, and as we go on, there is still racism, there's still discrimination. So let's come together and let's make sure that our voices are not lost and that our experience is told. So our heritage, our ancestors' story is our story. Okay? And this is why I would love to be a part of this project again, if I will have me, but hopefully you will as well. It's brilliant to be a part of something like this. You meet like-minded people, you get the training, we went to the British Library, we went to the archives, so we actually learned a lot and saw a lot rather than just stories. We were actually able to do that research and evidence our point of views, evidence why we've come so far, and evidence our worth as well. So I really encourage you all to get involved. It's brilliant, and we are really, really making a difference by doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Farida. You might have noticed a slight change to the program that is done intentionally. What just Farida has said about the form of racism that we experience today and the experience that we and our families and our parents have gone through in this country are different. And they are both in form is different, and its matter in terms of its impact in our lives equally significantly. And the form is, I think, in the academia, if I'm wrong, please do correct me, and all of you, is that the institution of ethnic exchange. And this is why I said is that politics is used today as a representation of the community ourselves, that we represent as an institution in the political organization. Ethnic ourselves and exchange don't represent ourselves. We are used as pawns often to represent against our own interests. And we do see that happening throughout the political organizations and the organizations of employment where we work. So thank you, Farida, for bringing that to this meeting today. I now like to invite Sanjida Alam to talk about this project and how Tower Hamlets Local History Library and Archives is is going to make a contribution, because I thought in a hard presentation would summarize the speaker's presentation preceded up to this point. Thank you.
Welcome everybody, and thank you for having me today. You can tell I've never done the whole mic thing. So in many ways, I represent the institution that will hold a lot of these histories, but it's also an institution that you should all be comfortable in critiquing and challenging. I will talk as to why that is the case, but if you don't know who we are or where we are, we're on Bangkok Road, squeezed in between Milo Hospital and Queen Mary University. So that building has been there since 1861, and it used to be an old vestry hall, essentially a town hall. What do? We preserve records, basically. Our main function is to preserve the council records, and then material relating to the history of the borough. So that will include housing, migration, working class histories, prominent figures in the borough, and we collect material we call library and archives. So library materials are essentially periodicals, newspapers, ephemera, and archive are unique records. So that all histories that you'll be collating will be unique, one-off records. And if you come and visit us, this is where you'll be doing the research. As a formal old institution building, as you'd expect. So we hold around 20,000 books, pamphlets dating from the 17th century, electoral voting registers, trade directories from 1800, newspaper cuttings, photographs, illustrations, maps. So an array of material. However, you can imagine the histories, what we hold isn't complete. There's a dominant story that is told in these institutions, as you've all touched on. So I'd like to focus a little bit on what we hold in the archive and what story that might tell, as opposed to what you might be contributing and telling. So if we look at absences in the collections we have, they're mostly written records, right? Our culture historically, we've come to writing much later. That was almost, call it a colonial project, I suppose. A lot of records are mislabeled, misspelt. When you're researching, you'll look at Hindu, H-I-N-D-O-O, or Bengali, or there's different iterations of the word that you're looking for, so it makes it very difficult. And a lot of that is because we've not told our stories, right? We've not been the writers of how we should be addressed. We've always been spoken about and at. We don't all own the records. Like you mentioned, there are academic articles written about you, your experiences, your ethnicity. And then the thing that I find difficult sometimes is the records are incredibly violent. And sometimes we get used to that because we watch the news, we are used to newspapers, but you might come into the archive and actually see people you know that have been reported about, for example, newspaper articles that might have quite violent images, and that is hurtful and it's painful, and I don't think that's always considered when you're entering these institutions, what type of stories are told about us. So then what's missing are the joyful and mundane, the day-to-day stuff, the different modes of resistance, and we can come to that. So I'm going to rush through because you've all covered a lot of these histories, and so I'll try and focus on the struggle, allyship, resistance element, and but I will be focusing on what we hold as opposed to personal experience that you might have, and essentially the community that you've grown up in. This is really humbling for me because I have learned about your stories through institutional writings and recordings, right? This is I may have read about you in some of these articles, and this might be the first time I'm in your presence. So, and that is hopefully what we're going to attempt to bridge with this project. So we've kind of covered this, but these are really bullet points of some of the seminal points in the history. We're not new. We've been here for a few hundred years. Our histories are entangled, and there's no way of escaping that, however much there are attempts of erasure. Oh, there was a reference to this. Go back a little. So if you look at the map, I don't know if you're able to see Naval Row. Right in the middle is where Naval Row is, and it's basically a wall that was built to protect goods that would have come on the East India Company ships. That is the wall. So, and behind that is Mulberry Place, which used to be where Tower Hamlets Council was. So the history is still there, and we're walking around it. The violence is still there in very subtle ways that we might not be aware of. And it's just ironic that that's where it used to be. I think everybody's probably so familiar with this image. The photographer has no idea who these people are. The image is titled as Lascars in Limehouse. This image is owned by Getty Images. This is a classic example of inference whereby if you know the history, if you know the area, this might be Bengali Sileti sailors. Okay, let's just call it that. Again, we've had no voice in telling this story. We are photographed, mostly by white men, who profit from it. So this is owned by Getty Images, and we don't necessarily have the permission to use these images. Next. So I'm jumping a lot here, and again focusing on how a researcher might come into the archive and discover the Bengali or Bangladeshi or Sileti community. And this is a map from a book by Michael Banton, who basically did an ethnographic study of the population. This was around 1955, this was published. It's disturbing, it's possibly inaccurate in terms of how people are labeled, but it's also fascinating because you see how diverse the community was even in the 50s. This is Stepney area, Stepney Limehouse. And it's really interesting to see the cafes. So it's almost like a Pakistani or Sikh, we don't know. Most likely to be Pakistani. Could Pakistani, does Pakistani mean Bengali? In the 50s likely. So when you enter and look at this material, it's very important you don't see it as it is. You question that because you have a lot of knowledge yourself. Don't feel threatened by an academic book. You know, you have lived experience. Next, please. And everybody is familiar with this. I had to include it because it's something that we all refer to, and it was written in 1987. That's a few decades ago. I think we need to not move from that, because it actually is very important. Most of the people who were interviewed for the book are no longer with us. And we're really lucky in that we have the original records, the original transcripts in our archive collection. And the importance of this book is that it covers a lot of the stories pre-71, so a lot of the, what would have been, I guess, sailors, talk about the Pakistan Welfare Association, East Pakistan House in Hanbury, and even earlier than that. So if you've not read it, it's worth a read just to almost find those places so you can then map it out by yourself. The other thing I wanted to know, in the book, she also critiques herself in saying, as a white woman, she didn't feel comfortable interviewing Bengali men because she felt like there might be a loss in terms of how much these men would tell her. But her response was, well, she was told that, well, no one's asking us. Did you want to say something? Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry, forgot my thread. So the men had mentioned that, well, nobody's asking us, and it's important for future generations. It's quite shocking to read that in 1987, and we're in 2024. For us to be saying that now shows the urgency, A, of this project, but also all of us individually, whether you're involved in the project or not, either to speak to your parents, your grandparents, get those stories for yourself. The thing I want to highlight, you don't have to do the storytelling, the listening as part of a project. It's important you do that for yourself and your family. There have been occasions where grandparents or fathers and mothers haven't been comfortable in talking about these stories. So those are, I think, interesting points you made about being very objective. You know, it's not always a celebration. Sometimes it's quite traumatic to look back. Next. I don't think Saeed is here. So this is the first story in the book. And by happenstance, I met Saeed, who works for Leaders and Community, and we were just talking, and he mentioned, oh, my grandfather, I think he was interviewed for the book, but he didn't open the door to Caroline. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, yep, he'd just come back from Hajj, and this extract is through a letterbox. So Caroline Adams was outside, knocking on the door, trying to get in, and he was like, no, I can't speak to you, I've just come from Hajj, and I can't talk about the past, a lot of bad things happened. But if you have time to read this, it almost encapsulates so many of the points that either you'll come across or has been made in a lot of the literature. So these are some of the extracts from the transcripts that we hold. So Caroline Adams did the recording. Lessons to be learned. Wasn't an oral historian. She spoke Bangla and Sylheti. However, I think what she did was place the recorder facing her. So you hear her clearly, but you don't hear the person she was interviewing. And though I imagine, obviously it wasn't deliberate, but that also says something in itself. Almost the voiceless still remains voiceless, even though we hold those cassette tapes. So what she did, she then had her own notes, which we have, like handwritten notes she made while she was interviewing, and then she went back and listened to the audio tape and wrote the transcripts. It's difficult to say that they're purely authentic, because we don't know what these interviewees didn't share with her interpretation of what they'd said. So though it's a valuable resource, it's okay for us to question it as well. This is some more extracts if you wanted to read, but I'll just switch to it. So 71, I guess the reason I'm going to have some of these just to show how people galvanized. There was critique of how nowadays people don't get together quickly. There's a lack of community. You can't say that for what was happening in 71. And I think what happened in 71 almost helped what was to come in terms of organizing and rallying. Some more images next. The other thing, I guess, again, going by what's in our records, there is no one to almost fill in the gaps or expand on these stories. A lot of what we have are from East London Advertiser or other newspapers. We have some socialist newspapers, but mostly it will be your mainstream articles. You could almost say it's not dissimilar to what you might read today in terms of the political situation we spoke about earlier. So this talks about how it wasn't, the Bengali community is not a homogenized group, right? And I hope the project brings that out. We don't all agree on the same politics, the same way of being. There are differences, and that's also okay, but we should be the ones who talk about those differences, not others. So this just highlights some of the internal issues that was happening in the 70s. Next please. Again, further. So we move on to 70s onwards. I guess everyone's touched on this, so we can kind of move on. Next. What was really nice to see images that I've not seen before earlier. These are, a lot of these images as well are by named photographers, which means when you come to an archive, it's very difficult for you to share these images publicly because they're not our copyright. And so again, ownership is a big deal about it here. Next. Again, some publications about what was happening in the 70s. Race Today, they were seminal in terms of helping with the housing issues that a lot of Bengali community faced. You were a huge part of that, Rajendra. This is the first time I'm meeting you in person. I've seen you in videos. So I won't go into the detail of that, but I guess this is also to show how different groups worked together. A big part of this movement was due to Race Today in terms of, there were a collective that had Dargis Howe, Farooq Gandhi, Linton Kwesi Johnson, Mala Sen, none of them from Bengali backgrounds. However, they brought kind of an infrastructure to the fight in terms of legal support. This is more recent, this is 90s, I guess you're all familiar with it. The reason I'm sharing this with you, it's very interesting in our archive to read about Tower Hamlets 9. Most of it is newspaper articles again, but if we go to the next slide please, and the one after. It's important to counter that narrative, right? So these publications are by Mayar Akash, and he was there at the time. So these are self-published books, his own pictures, his own writings. He's interviewed people who were there. So whenever I get material out to show people the Tower Hamlets 9, I always bring this along with it to say, okay, look, these are voices of the people who were there, and these are the newspaper articles. Yes. Okay, next. I'm rushing through. I just wanted to talk about different modes of resistance. The resistance on the streets, we rally together, we campaign, but there are, you could call it quieter, but I wouldn't say they're quieter. You touched on cultural activities. These are magazines, Nari Shangam, bilingual magazines that were produced. There were lots of other, the Bengali Youth League. And next, please, and I'll end on this final one. Music played a huge part in this too. And I really look forward to the project after this, where we can finally explore 90s and noughties and what's happening now, and the younger generation. I will end on why it's really important. I was very naive when I entered the sector, especially starting at Tower Hamlets Archive, in assuming, because outside looking in, the community looks like they're very together, very... There's just so much, even in the archive, that compared to lots of the other minority groups or marginalized communities in the borough, the Bengali archive collection is larger. But when we have lots of university students coming in, I'm quite surprised as to how little they know. And so that's why this project is really important, and it's really important that we counter the existing narrative that's in the archive that is essentially very institutionalized. And we're trying to change that ourselves as well. But it's important that it comes from you, and that we can, I know we're not the newspapers and we just hold and preserve, responsible preserving, but it's still important. I still represent an institution, and what we can't afford to have, I suppose, is individuals who are interested in these histories. Well, what happens when I'm gone? There's someone else who replaces me. Will they take an interest in you? So we shouldn't be dependent on sort of individuals leading your voices. It should be you. I think that's well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sanjida. Thank you for your presentation, and especially this has been, I'm sure, very important, informative presentation for us in respect of the scope and objective of this project. As you said, that you have a lot of gap in your data, in your archives, and we certainly, starting with this project, intended to fill some of those gaps. I think we are on time, although that we were half an hour delayed in the start of our program. It's my wife said that we are on time. Now I would like to open up the opportunity to, because I know everyone would like to say something, and it is very important that we listen to you. But the question is, what is the methodology that we're going to use as a vehicle to communicate with you today? And we have suggested two ways to communicate. One is to allow some of you, I know everyone has very important participation here and want to share with us your experience. And also tell us the best way forward. There is a way, without having to talk on the microphone, that we have a feedback form, and I would urge everyone, if you have not already completed the feedback form, to do that so that we can come back to you and seek your engagement through that. And unfortunately, although as we all wish to make a microphone available to all of you, it is not going to be possible. So I'm going to take a judgment call on this one. And first of all, I'm going to invite some of you, and then maybe I give a couple of opportunities to those who really want to make a contribution here today. So first of all, this is not in any way seniority or juniority. It's just a recall of memory that is going to dictate who I call. So I want to, as being a Bengali and grown up in East London, in the midst of a very strong culture that we grew up in, from the culture that we still home that we brought in from Bangladesh, is to respect my elders. And I have one elder who is my Nana. Oh. And that Nana is very old. I don't mean in terms of age, but in terms of experience, probably amongst most of us, is activism. say a few words. I'm not going to time limit, but I'm going to indicate when I would like you to finish. So please, Nanak, if you can allow to. Okay, yeah. Thank you for that.
Just a small introduction from you. You mentioned Malaysian, and I know those people anyway, someone who's lies on love. Have you ever thought they've been working in Tower Hamlets until 1977? Suddenly, why they disappear? What was the reason for it? That's all I want.
I don't know actually. I remember somebody touched on this where it was almost as if they kind of achieved a small victory. Sorry.
I admit I don't fully know the reason, but there has been discussions where they felt that they've reached small victory.
Of what?
In terms of garnering some housing, some of the Bengali communities. There are possible conflicts within the Bengali housing action group. But I'm not sure why, as a collective, suddenly they decided no longer to work with the community here. Sorry, I can't answer.
You can. I know.
I can find out.
That's all I want.
Thank you, Anna. You will find out. Now I want to be very personally selective because I hang out quite often with him. Shukur, come and tell something else.
Okay.
There's far too much to say about what's happening because nothing has moved that far. Although we are sitting here, we can pat ourselves on the back, nothing has moved so far as we would want to see it. What we really need to do is look at, not only looking at the voices not from that era, but also look at what is happening now with our kids. What are their experiences, and feed that in, not just us lot who were there. And yes, we did bring some change. You touched on some issues, and I think I touched on some issues as what happened to those people. People like Farah Dondi went on to be the head of Channel 4 programming, and all of those people moved on to better things on the back of what they did here. So that's one of the reasons. And the other thing that we need to really look at, and is also not only that element of it, but also the struggle. You put Joy Bangla there, and where that led to in terms of the revolution in the music industry. Not only that, we was part of that band, and there was a blue plaque on Brick Lane. That's an achievement, I think, also highlighting those sort of issues, not just looking at the negative side, but also the positive impact. The takeover of Tower Hamlets Council by us lot, making sure that we politically fought to get in there and bring change. And bring change in a massive way, especially in the field of housing, because that was one of our main things. Terry is sitting here somewhere, and he was one of those that was involved in that struggle. And I think what we need to do is clearly list that and look at how those sort of experiences, and look at what impact that has had on where we are now, what's happening with the housing situation. I'm now working on a national program on social housing to deliver 100 billion over the next 10 years into the UK. And it's led by Bengali, it's led by me, to look at those sort of issues. But I think it's also what is going to be happening for the next 10, 20, 30 years when most of us won't be around. And to see how the impact that we have had on things like that. I don't want to go on too much, but because I know there are a lot of other people that want to say things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shukr. Yes, you have probably have noticed in the presentation, and especially Dr. Ahmadullah have outlined, this program, the project that we have undertaken now, is only the beginning. There's going to be a series, and we wanted to start with the past so that we have a platform where to stand, and then talk about now and build our future. That's the idea, and I'm sure that everyone who are here to make suggestions, they will be taken on board. And like we said, is that every suggestion and contributions are welcome, because this is an open platform, and this is how we want to present this project as our stories. Thank you, Shukr. Now I want to ask somebody who is very dear to me. I don't see him. Mr. Chanavia.
Oh, he's gone.
No, is he gone? Oh, okay. He's the one who, the reason why I'm standing here, because when I was very young, in late 70s, early 80s, he spent about 2 years chasing me to join and come and work in the community, so that I did get involved with him in establishing Boundary Community School and University from that was in the early 80s. One of the elder brothers here, Sheltrai, would you please say a few words? We haven't heard from you for a long time. So
yes, you haven't. Thank you for inviting me, and especially when I get reminded by Jalal and most importantly Saiful Alam, then I said, no, I should go. Though I am lately very much involved with sort of work which probably many of you at my age will be retiring. So I said, I'm not going to retire until I'm tired. So, wonderful idea. Obviously, I have discussed very issues of this kind of views. So for when he initiated this and started to engage me, I'll be involved as you progress. I was very reluctant, as you also mentioned, so many books have been published by some individuals, many individuals who had no knowledge of what went on during the days of our struggle, but probably felt that they could write something to promote themselves, as well as make some money as well in the process, possibly. Some people get some contribution, donation, etc. I was reluctant to even participate. Many people was chasing me to put some comments. I did not. Even recently, you have seen the Channel 4 made some, they initiated some programs. They contacted me over the last 2 years. But when I asked that I want to see how to ensure whatever went on, what was the true factual stories and so on, if they are not part of your program, then I'm not interested. Because we have been misled many times before. We have given the information to them and they presented the way they like it. Or they have been paid to do. So I didn't participate. Anyway, in relation to the changes we wanted to bring, obviously Shukur touched a little. Shukur, we must agree that initial struggle of our community fighting on the street, housing, whatever, that was selfless. That is, we collectively felt it was necessary for us to fight on every sector in order to empower our community and its survival. But later on, when we thought institutions need to be engaged with, such as political, whether it is our council, who was the most delivery mechanism in terms of local delivery. So obviously that was the target. GLC was another organization probably unluckily or rather unfortunately GLC had to pack up. So we could not expand our horizon on that level. But our good friend Ken Livingstone, he tried. He tried his level best. We must admire that he tried his level best to help us mitigate the problems we had between the squatter and squatted properties and tenants, etc. Legalize them. He really relaxed a lot and managed to provide housing to many of us who had to squat in those properties. And many other, obviously, uplifting bringing the living standard of the minimum, to maintain a minimum living standard in the housing sector, which was not there anyway in the beginning. Some of the properties which we used to occupy was declared condemned, didn't have any collection of electricity, gas, and anyway, the Terry is quite helpful on that. He helped a lot, to do that. Okay, now, so then on, you talked about how much we achieved. Collectively, again, engaging with the local authority, like getting our friends or our colleagues to get elected in the council. That was collectively, we never thought about, obviously we were divided between Bangladeshi politics a lot, but we did not use that to spoil our objective. Bear in mind, those days, no matter what political association we had in relation to Bangladesh politics, in UK we tried to remain united on our focus that is a collective achievement we need to achieve. That happened for a few years, but then on what happened? Then when buy and sell, the tactics of, what should I say, I would not blame the white as a class. There were a lot of white people who worked with us. Like Ken Livingstone was also known as white. He helped us. Paul Misley, being a leader of the Tower Hamlets Council, he joined with all the demos we had, the struggle demos we had. Though many of his councillors, his own associate, wanted to distance themselves with us. So it's just an individual felt nice to do, civilized way to do, engage with people who are having problems, yeah? This is civilized. What have we seen now? So many buy and seller came, they bought our councillors on many front and created a delivery mechanism, the style they wanted to achieve. The style was to divide us, rule us, and ethnic cleansing mechanism started, whereby the 9,000 residents of Spitalfields were displaced. And how many Spitalfields I'm talking about where we are? Many of you don't know, we had almost 85% voting registered, listed voting, people in Spitalfields. Now where we are. The Brick Lane had 62 restaurants that was created by our own struggle, own people, that the single industry, we employed quite a lot of people. Where are they? So those cleansing operations began under the auspices of control of Labour Party syndicate, who racist syndicate operated for many years. Now where we are, we can see Enoch Powell telling us that we are, and Margaret Thatcher obviously Dalal referred to, also paid the race card. The Rishi Sunak also played the race card, being a race-oriented man himself, Asian man. This, what you call, recently somebody, Steamer, who is the Labour Party leader? What's his name? Steamer, is it? Can you please remind me? Unknown character, a totally lost character. He comes and advocate and tell us that we single out a Bangladeshi community, which never happened, not even any age, in a modern age, how dear he does it, and we still remain under his thumb and reflecting for bloody his party. This is where you are. We have not changed, we have not made much progress. Thank you.
Well done, boy.
Thank you. We will invite those of you who have expressed your interest to actively participate in this process. You can be certain that you will be one of those contributors in this project. And I'd like to ask Ayubai to say a few words, please. Ayubai, try and be brief. I know it is very difficult, but I know you will be able to.
Thank you very much, guys. I support this project, and I support it for two reasons. One is Dalal mentioned 78 and it being a turning point. I consider myself to be one of those who, in 1978, turned from being inward-looking to outward-looking. So I belong to that generation. Now I am in my early 60s. I have 3 grown-up children. One of them recently asked me, Dad, I want to learn a little bit about the history of Bangladeshi community in Britain. I want to know a little bit about what you did in 78, which you mention now and then in conversations. And to be honest with you, I couldn't refer him to any one source. There are various sources, starting with Ramila Tapar's Ayas, Laskas and Princes and Caroline Adams' books, but there isn't a definitive UK British Bangladeshi history. And since then I've been thinking, here is a gap. And I personally took some initiative, but it didn't go anywhere. I had ambition to form some kind of a organization to write that history. So I'm very pleased that East End Connection is now taking this very important task in hand. And I hope they will produce something that will, if you like, fill that gap. And parents like myself can point their children towards this kind of sources for a greater understanding of our presence here. The other thing that I am very excited about this project is that it is going to be written by people from our community. So people will be delving into the past from our own community, from our own perspective. And that will do something very important. I don't know, I did do a little bit of research in my university studies on race and British social policy. And I came across a writer who you probably know, Edward Said, the Palestinian public intellectual, who wrote a very important book called Orientalism. And he in that book, he actually talks about how damaging it is when people from other cultures and other experiences write about people who they don't know very much. It is their perspective. So they always define the communities that they are writing, which they don't belong, in a way that is not positive. It is often counterproductive. So I welcome this initiative and the emphasis on Bangladeshis, British Bangladeshis, researching on their own community, analyzing their problem from their own perspective, and writing it for our next generation. Thank you very much. I wish you all the best.
Just so you understand, there is, I don't know if you know Yusuf Chaudhry.
Yeah.
He's written 2 books. He set up the Sileti History Society in Birmingham.
Yeah.
So that's essentially, I guess, maybe the only historical reference that we have.
It is very personal account.
Yeah.
But I could suggest also for our young people a number of other books that not directly related to Bangladesh, but experiences of the black and ethnic languages in the UK. Paul Gilroy, there's a wonderful, there's 2 books that I studied in my course in Arabic, and Tarek is here. I'm going to ask him to just say very few words. Is There Ain't No Black in the Union Jack, and the other one is Between Camps. It's wonderful books that how contextualizes the racism and how the your identity is created by the other, so that you are subjugated in the intellectual domain. Tarek, thank you for coming in a very short notice. Tarek was my MC director at the park about 22 years ago. He's now in growth. Yeah, so Tarek, just a few words here, because he's from Westminster and he has done some work in this field in the 90s.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I can hear the resistance, very much so, about how academia should or shouldn't be involved in this type of work. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. Having been an academic for the best part of 30 years now, yes, our stories sometimes get subjugated and lumped together with all sorts of other stories. But I just want to pause to say that there is a new generation of Bangladeshi and British ethnic minority historians at universities that are looking into these sort of things. So I wouldn't write off collaboration with universities completely, particularly after the Black Lives Matter movement and decolonising the curriculum. All of those things are very important for us to be able to make alliances where possible. The other thing I want to add is, of course, our own personal stories are very, very important. And yes, if you have those stories, please do share them. Share them with your children if you can. I know it's traumatic, can be very traumatic, but these are the personal stories that are only going to live after you through those oral history. And we know as Bengalis, we have a rich tradition of oral history. So please do share your stories if possible. My uncle, who died the best part of, maybe now it's 13, 14 years ago, Mustaq Qureshi, some of you will know him. He shared those stories with us. Very important. Where he came from, when he came. He came in 56. He got caught up in Suez. He spent in the Suez crisis. He came by ship, and he got stuck. He got stuck for about 3 months before came to London. And he talks very positively about some of the alliances he made, particularly the work of Peter Shaw during the liberation times. So those stories are very important that you share with your children if you can. Trauma, of course, being a very important thing as well. Yes, I wholeheartedly support your project and hope it will be an educational tool as well for the next generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Yeah, thank you very much. Can I now ask Dr. Hanan to say a few words, please? And then I only one more speakers before I conclude. Invite Mr. Sofiralin to.
I think this is a very interesting, innovative project. This is to make a statement that we came, we exist, and will exist in the future. Dalal's contribution was very informative, and he was a participant in some of the issues, And I would like to add to the last speaker when she mentioned Battle of Plassey, This is a kind of classic example, when there was no battle there, As Ayub has mentioned this Edward Said's Orientalism, us and them, how they justified this colonial enterprise, This battle wasn't fought. They bribed a commander-in-chief, They gave him 30 lakhs rupee, and 2 major-ranking officers they fought. The Nawab had 200 elephants. If they had released these elephants, these 2,500 British army could have been crushed. They didn't do it. They just caught the Nawab and handed him over to them. This is how they justified colonial enterprise, us and them. Anyway, this project is a very interesting, innovative, and as the archives showed, that we don't have much. There is no representation. We don't. There is a
comment by Ibn Battuta or Marco Polo, that these people, they don't write about themselves. They don't write about their history. If you go to Dhaka University, you would say that we read Nicholson, P. Roberts about Indian history. So here we exist, we came, we made a contribution. Particularly, Jalal has mentioned Vedapok Nurulog, like Nurulog, the struggle for sustaining our language. I hope this struggle will be included in this research, and how we progressed, how we could struggle to sustain, and then eventually some of our people, progressive politics have failed us, and our Bengali learning was stopped, We couldn't sustain this. So these are the issues I think should be included in this research, in this representation. And I also think that as there will be a story about ordinary people who have lived experiences and who underwent all these processes, it will be a success project, and I commit that I will support the people who will successfully organize this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And where we are, we have left the colonies behind, we have fought against it, and we attained our independence. But the imperialism has not gone away. We are still subject to the imperialist ideals, and especially the intellectual imperialism that still dominate over us. And this is, hopefully, this project will be one of them encountering that.
So I just wanted to echo both the last speakers in that it's really difficult, and I'm not sure if that's a good or bad thing in terms of people trying to find their own history and research. It is a puzzle, and so we have to look at history that's almost made up, question that, look at the academics. We've got, as you mentioned, incredible writers, and we've got Shabna Begum, who writes incredibly about the squatting here. We've got Fatima Regina. There are other academics across the country, British Bangladeshis, who are writing, and they're using quite almost non-traditional academic methodologies in how they study. You all mentioned Peter Shaw, Paul Beasley. I'll add John Eversley to that. We hold their personal papers at the archive. And so we have remnants of what was happening, and it's just for us almost to piece together the stories. So I just wanted to say, I think it's important to use all of that's available to us.
Thank you, Sanjita. Yeah. Now, last but not the least, I want to invite Monijoji to say a few words. Please, Moni. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Is there anyone else that last chance to? Okay, can I now invite Saiful Alam, ex-mayor of the Hanbury Council, to sum up this program.
Yeah. All the speakers have outlined their proposals, what is the process, what we wanted to do, and what we wanted to achieve. And the community leaders and community workers have already said the need is there. Therefore, we have started the process. Inshallah, in 18 months' time, we will produce a book which will give correct information. That is our thing. And you have taken all the trouble to come and attend this event. Hope to see you in future. Thank you very much for your help.
Thank you very much all. Just last few words. You will see an example, as Dr. Ahmedullah said, there is a book outside. Please do take a copy. East India Company Spice War Stories. And that will give you some idea as to the level of work that the people involved with this project really. Thank you.
The memory project, yes.
Yes. Make sure you thank Cheese this way, this way. Everybody this way. Thank you, sir. Okay, more please. Cheers. আপনারা যাইবার আগে সিঙ্গাড়া খাইয়া যান যদি আমাকে হোম মেড না না খাইয়া যাই এই সিঙ্গাড়া কোন বড় নিতে করি না আমি
related. এটা বহুত কনফিউজ হওয়ার আমরা কি ভাই এখানে দেশে আমরা এক লাখ একদম ফাস্ট ফুডের উপায় দিয়ে সব ট্রাই করা হয় এটা বহুত কনফিউজ
Yeah, beautiful. I love the stories I got to hear. It was a beautiful way to also explore the Bangladesh. Thank you. set the foundation for all that work. I'm going to try to
No, he rejected my effort and he didn't get any help. That's you. That gives you power. You don't have to know that those things that injured you or whatever.
I don't know.